Records of the expedition. Diary kept jointly by Messrs. Burke and Wills. Surveyor's report on the country lying between Torrawato and Cooper's Creek. It now becomes necessary to advert to the written records left by the exploring party. These were kept in the handwriting of Mr. Wills, who devoted part of every evening to the compilation of a diary, in which the proceedings of the day were entered and read over to Mr. Burke, who made any additions or alterations he thought advisable. Mr. Wills also, in his capacity of surveyor, furnished to his leader, for the information of the committee, a detailed account of the country through which they passed. The paper referring to that part of Australia lying between Torrawato and Cooper's Creek is here given, and will be found a most interesting document, full of valuable information, and useful as being explanatory of many allusions made in the diaries which follow hereafter. The accompanying map will show the course taken by the expedition, as marked in the tracing referred to by Mr. Wills. Surveyor's Report. Camp 65, Depot, Cooper's Creek, December 15, 1860. Sir, I have the honour to place in the hands of our leader, for transmission to the committee, my third report, and a tracing showing the country traversed since my last was written. I regret that I have been unable to devote so much attention to either as I could have desired, but I have no doubt that the committee will make due allowance for my want of time, and the inconveniences attending the execution of such work in our present position. I have, etc., William J. Wills, Surveyor Assistant Observer, the Honorary Secretary of the Exploration Committee. Forwarded. Depot, December 16, 1860. As Mr. Wills' report, with which I fully concur, contains all the necessary details with regard to the state of the country through which we passed, I have not referred to the subject in mine. The Honorary Secretary of the Exploration Committee, R. O'Hara Burke, Leader. Surveyor's Report. The accompanying tracing will show the course taken by the expedition party from the Torrawato Swamp, in latitude 30 degrees 1 minute 30 seconds south, longitude 142 degrees 36 minutes east. To the depot on Cooper's Creek, Camp 65, latitude 27 degrees 37 minutes 8 seconds south, longitude 141 degrees 6 minutes east. Water supply between Torrawato and Wright's Creek. The country traversed to the north of the Torrawato Swamp and lying between that place and Wright's Creek is neither so well grassed nor watered as that to the south of the swamp. The land falls considerably as far as Kangapundi, and a great extent of it is subject to inundation. Nearly all the water met with was thick and muddy. It was obtained from small clay pans, most of which would probably be dry in 3 weeks. This applies to all the places at which we found water, with the exception of Kanilta, Kangapundi, and the 4 water holes to the south of Wright's Creek. Kanilta. Kanilta is a water hole of good clear water in a small rocky creek, which runs out on the low mud flats and swampy ground lying between Altolka and Tongawoko. It is situated in latitude 29 degrees 26 minutes 42 seconds south, longitude 142 degrees 40 minutes east. By account, nearly a mile from the northwesternmost point of the swampy ground. This point may be distinguished by the growth of a coarse kind of reedy grass, which does not make its appearance on the southern portion of the swamp or lake. The water in the hole was only 2 or 3 feet deep, but it is well shaded by box trees, and will probably last 2 or 3 months. The temperature of the surface of the water at 7 a.m. November 2nd was 60.5 degrees, that of the air being at the same time 60 degrees. The Kangapundi Swamp. The Kangapundi Swamp is an extensive tract of low clay land, which bears the appearance, as regards to the vegetation on its banks, of having a tolerably permanent supply of water. But, unless some portions of the swamp are much deeper than where we passed, the water could not last throughout a dry season. The banks of the swamp are densely clothed with grasses, marshmallows, polygonum bushes, and shrubs, which shelter numerous kinds of waterfowl and snakes. Character of land. It will be seen by the tracing that a large proportion of the land between Torrawato and Wright's Creek is composed of low mud plains and clay flats, subject to inundation. Most of these are devoid of vegetation of any kind, and others carry some stunted salt bushes and coarse grasses, which appear to be struggling between life and death. Bounding the mudflats are generally some stony rises, well grassed and sometimes lightly timbered. The more elevated plains are sandy and support a fine supply of healthy salt bushes, as well as here and there a few grasses. On the rises to the south-southeast of Canilta may be seen great quantities of quartz rocks, forming dikes in the skies rises. The latter in some places adjoin and run into hills of loose stone, having the appearance of indurated clay. From Kangapundi to Wright's Creek the ground is light-coloured, and of a clayey nature. It forms a series of dry clay pans, separated from one another by low sandy banks on which the vegetation was fresh and green. At about 17 miles from the former place are 3 large holes, with water from 2 to 3 feet deep in the deepest part, and at 6 miles further on another large one, which might almost be termed a lake, being nearly 1,000 links square. About these were some lines of sandhills running about northeast and southwest, and in one of the flats between the sandhills I found several pieces of satin spar in lumps, the size of one's hand, partially buried in the ground, and all of them with a plane of cleavage nearly perpendicular to the surface of the ground. Bellew or Wright's Creek. The lower portion of Wright's Creek, called by the natives Bellew, is situated in latitude 28 degrees 48 minutes south, and longitude 142 degrees 53 minutes east, by account. At this point the creek, after breaking into several small channels, runs out on a grassy plain, the water continuing in a southerly direction probably until it meets that from the torrents and other creeks at the Kangapundi swamp. There was plenty of water in this part of the creek when we passed, but I cannot speak to its permanence. The banks are well lined with box timber, as well as with marshmallows and wild spinach. The land on either side consists of well-grassed sandy rises. At 4 or 5 miles above this the creek is a narrow, dry, sandy watercourse, winding through a grassy valley, which everywhere presents indications of the most violent floods. Beyond this is an extensive grassy plain, and for 3 or 4 miles scarcely a trace of the creek could be seen. We then came to a clump of trees, amongst which were 2 large waterholes surrounded by polygonum bushes and containing great numbers of small fish. These holes appear to be permanent. We found about 60 blacks camped here, above the waterholes, which are together about half a mile long. The creek again disappears on the plain. The land for the next 10 or 12 miles, in a north-northeast direction, is very fine for pastoral purposes, being alternately grassy plains and sand ridges. At 12 or 13 miles we crossed the creek, where it has cut for itself a deep narrow channel, the banks of which are densely timbered and well grassed, but the waterholes are small and contained very little water. For a distance of 6 miles the creek is of a very insignificant character. It appears to be divided into several branches, which traverse clay flats badly grassed. Here and there are some lines of low sandy rises, with plenty of feed on them. All the watercourses are distinctly marked by lines of box timber. At about 9 miles from where we crossed the creek, and after traversing some loose polygonal ground which was covered with mussel shells and a shell resembling a periwinkle, we came to a branch of the creek containing a splendid waterhole, 150 links broad and about half a mile long. A little above this the creek again disappears for a short distance, and then there is a long narrow channel of undoubtedly permanent water, being nearly 4 feet deep in the shallowest places. It is only on an average about 50 links broad, and well sheltered by overhanging box trees. The temperature of the water on the morning of the 7th of November at 6 o'clock was 68 degrees, the temperature of the air at the same time being 50.5 degrees. Our camp at this place is indicated by a box tree marked B, over 52 in square, the geographical position of which is by account 28 degrees 26 minutes 9 seconds south latitude and longitude 143 degrees east. In proceeding from here in a north-northeasterly direction up the course of the creek, or rather of the water, for the creek is again lost on the plains for 5 or 6 miles, we passed the southernmost point of a prominent sandstone range, the nearest portion of which lay about 1.5 miles to the westward. At about 9 miles we again touched the creek, where it is about 3 chains broad. The banks are firm and shelving from 10 to 12 feet above the water, and lined with box, acacias, some large gums, gigantic marshmallows, polygonum, etc. In the creek there is abundance of fish, and the ducks and other waterfowl on it are numberless. From what we have seen of the blacks, I should say the population cannot be far short of 150, and it might be considerably more. From here we proceeded in an east-northeasterly direction along the west bank of this fine waterhole, and at 2½ miles found it begin rapidly to decrease in breadth, and a little further on there was nothing but a few small stony watercourses, traversing a dense box forest. At this point there is a level bed of sandstone pebbles, close to and over a part of which the creek flows. The blacks have here gone to the trouble of making paths for themselves, along which we turned off from the creek on a north-northeasterly course, and at about 3 miles, coming on earthy plains with no signs of water ahead, we again turned into the creek and camped at a small waterhole. From here the line of river timber continues in a northeasterly direction. To the west and north-northwest is a line of sandstone ranges running off in the same direction. The land in the immediate vicinity of the creek on the west side is very poorly grassed, all the way up from where we crossed it. That on the east side appeared to be better. I think there can scarcely be a doubt but what this creek is the lower portion of the Warrego River, although I believe that its main supply of water is obtained from the adjoining ranges, which send down innumerable creeks into the flats through which it flows. Some latitude observations at Camp 53, the farthest point to which we traced the creek, placed us in 28 degrees 16 minutes 40 seconds south, our latitude, by account, being 28 degrees 17 minutes 18 seconds